She thought it was over. The paperwork was signed. The court date had passed. The lawyers had moved on. But months later, her ex still hadn't transferred the retirement account. The payout for the house was delayed. Child support? Sporadic. And every time she tried to enforce the agreement, she hit a wall. Turns out, she missed one final step. And she's not the only one. Every year, thousands of women finalize their divorces without realizing there's unfinished business. Legal, financial, and personal. They assume that once the judge signs the order, everything just happens. But the truth is, a signed decree doesn't automatically protect your money, your property, or even your credit. There's a quiet trap here. One that isn't obvious until it's already cost you. And if you don't catch it in time, enforcing what you're owed can become a painful, expensive uphill battle. This video isn't about scare tactics. It's about clarity. Because when you understand what most people miss at the very end of a divorce, you give yourself the power to actually move on. Not just legally, but emotionally and financially too. So if you or someone you care about is going through a divorce or already finalized one, keep watching. These are the steps no one talks about. But every woman needs to know. Most women breathe a sigh of relief the day the divorce is finalized. The paperwork is signed, the judgment is entered, and everyone tells you it's officially over. But what nobody says, and what too many women learn the hard way, is that a signed agreement doesn't actually enforce itself. You can have every detail spelled out in the divorce decree. Who gets what, how much is owed, when payment should happen. But if you don't take the next step, none of it is guaranteed to happen. And here's the truth most people overlook. Divorce courts don't automatically set up enforcement. That part is often left up to you. It feels like everything should fall into place once the documents are approved. But behind the scenes, there's a maze of follow-up paperwork, orders that need to be drafted, filed, and processed after the main judgment. Without them, the agreement might as well be a suggestion. That means things like retirement funds can remain untouched, child support can be delayed for months, and asset transfers can quietly stall. All because the enforcement side was never activated. And by the time most women realize that, the damage is already done. They're chasing down payments, filing motions, hiring more lawyers, all to enforce something they thought was already handled. And the worst part? Many of them never knew they missed a step, until it was too late. This is the step that blindsides more women than you'd ever expect. You go through a tough divorce, agree to split the retirement accounts. Maybe a 401k, a pension, or a military benefit, and it's written clearly in the judgment. You think done. But here's the problem. Without a document called a QDRO, you don't get a cent. QDRO stands for Qualified Domestic Relations Order. It's not just a formality. It's the legal mechanism that actually tells the retirement plan to divide the funds. Without it, your share just doesn't happen. Even if the divorce agreement says you're entitled to half. Too many women assume the divorce order is enough. They don't realize that retirement accounts are governed by federal rules, and the QDRO is the only way to trigger the transfer. What's worse? If your ex retires early or starts withdrawing the money before the QDRO is filed, it can be nearly impossible to recover what you were owed. Some men, and this is no exaggeration, intentionally retire early or move the funds out before the paperwork is processed. And without that order in place, the window to stop it can slam shut fast. This one mistake has cost women tens of thousands of dollars, even after winning those exact amounts in court. So if retirement funds are part of your divorce, remember, the QDRO isn't optional. It's the key to unlocking what you fought for. Without it, you're left chasing money that may already be gone. It sounds like a fair trade at first. He keeps the house, and in return, he agrees to pay you your share of the equity. Simple, right? But what most women don't realize is that unless that payout is clearly enforced, with timelines, penalties, and legal backing, you could end up waiting for that money indefinitely. In theory, the house should be refinanced, sold, or bought out within a specific time frame. But if that deadline isn't written in, or worse, not enforced through follow-up legal action, your ex can delay the process for months, even years. Meanwhile, your equity, your money, is trapped in a property you no longer live in, tied to a man who has no incentive to move quickly. And here's where it gets even worse. Some exes take out loans against the property before the payout happens. That means by the time you're supposed to receive your share, there's nothing left. The value is drained. The debt is higher. And legally, It becomes a much harder battle to fight. This happens more often than you'd think. The divorce agreement might say he owes you, but without language that makes the payout urgent and enforceable, he can simply stall. He knows you're exhausted from the process. He knows legal fees add up. And he knows delays work in his favor. So if you're agreeing to let him keep the house, don't just trust that your equity will show up. Make sure the timeline is airtight. The enforcement is real. And that you're not giving away the biggest financial asset of your marriage in exchange for promises that quietly disappear. You finally get a number. The court orders him to pay child support. It's written into the divorce decree, official, binding, signed. But months go by, and the payments are late. Or missing altogether. You call. You text. You remind. Nothing changes. What went wrong? Here's the truth no one tells you. Just because child support is ordered doesn't mean it's automatically enforced. Unless you take the next step, setting up income withholding, the responsibility to pay still rests on him. And if he decides to disappear, delay, or dodge, there's not much standing in his way. Income withholding is a simple but critical action. It tells his employer to deduct child support directly from his paycheck, before he ever touches it. It's reliable, trackable, and removes the emotional burden of chasing him down each month. But if it's not filed, you're stuck in a cycle of asking, waiting, and hoping. Some men know this. They take advantage of it. They play the system. They claim they're between jobs, or had an emergency, or meant to send it next week. And if the court doesn't have enforcement set up on the front end, you have to go back. File motions, wait for hearings, prove he's behind. Meanwhile, you're covering everything alone. It's not just about the money. It's about the stress. The uncertainty. The pressure to be both parents while the one who's supposed to help keeps slipping through the cracks. So if you've been awarded child support, don't stop there. Set up enforcement. Use every legal tool available. Because relying on someone who already let you down once is a risk you can't afford to take twice. Divorce is supposed to divide everything. The assets, the debts, the responsibilities. But here's the harsh reality. Creditors don't care what your divorce agreement says. If your name is still on a loan, a credit card, or a mortgage, you're still responsible. Even if the court ordered him to pay it. And this is where so many women get blindsided. They assume that because the judge assigned that debt to their ex, it's no longer their problem. But banks and lenders don't follow court orders. They follow contracts. If your name is on that paper, and the bill goes unpaid, it's your credit that takes the hit. It doesn't matter if he promised to make the payments. It doesn't matter if it's written into the divorce. One missed bill, one default, and suddenly your credit score is wrecked. Getting a loan, a car, even renting an apartment can become a nightmare. And rebuilding damaged credit isn't quick. It can follow you for years. What's worse? Some exes do it on purpose. They stop paying, knowing it'll hurt you. They max out joint cards and leave the mess behind. And if you didn't protect yourself during the divorce, you may have no legal way to stop the fallout. The only way to prevent this is to separate every account. Completely. That means closing joint credit cards, refinancing loans to remove your name, and making sure you're not financially tied to someone who no longer has your best interests at heart. Because after the divorce, your name is your responsibility. And if you don't guard it, you could end up paying the price for debts that were never supposed to be yours. The divorce is done. You've divided the property. Maybe you kept the car, maybe he kept the house. It's all spelled out in black and white. But months later, something strange happens. You get a notice about a ticket for a car he now drives. Or worse, a tax bill for a house you don't live in anymore. Why? Because no one changed the title. This is one of the most quietly destructive mistakes women make after divorce, forgetting to legally update ownership documents. You think, we agreed on everything, and assume the details are handled. But unless you or your attorney formally remove your name from shared titles, or his from yours, you stay legally tied. And whatever happens under that name, it's your problem. That means if he racks up parking tickets on the car, they could come after you. If the house goes into foreclosure and your name's still on the deed, your credit could take the hit. If he sells something you technically still co-own, you could get caught in the legal mess that follows. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes, it's just paperwork that was forgotten. But the consequences are the same. Because in the eyes of the law, if your name is still on the title, you're still involved, whether you like it or not. This includes cars, houses, business licenses, utilities, even joint bank accounts. If it has your name on it, you have to treat it like a live wire. Remove yourself officially. Don't assume the court or your ex will do it for you. Because one overlooked signature can tie you to years of financial and legal chaos. You left the marriage. Don't stay legally attached to the wreckage. So why does this happen? Why do so many smart, capable women walk away from a divorce thinking it's finished, only to face months, even years, of delayed payments, missing documents, and legal headaches? Because no one tells you this part. During the divorce, everything feels like a battle. You're juggling lawyers, court dates, financial disclosures, and emotional strain that most people can't even begin to understand. By the time the agreement is finalized, you're exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, financially, drained. You just want it to be over. And the system doesn't help. Most lawyers focus on winning the case, not walking you through what happens afterward. Courts don't hand you a checklist of follow-up steps. No one sits you down to explain the deadlines, the enforcement tools, the accounts you still need to update. You're expected to figure it out on your own, at the exact moment you're least equipped to do it. That's how critical steps get skipped. That's how pensions go unclaimed. That's how child support goes unpaid and debts go unnoticed until it's too late. It's not because you weren't strong or smart or prepared. It's because the system is built to move on, whether you're ready or not. And the truth is, most women don't realize what they missed until the fallout begins. A missed check. A credit ding. A letter in the mail that says something you thought was settled wasn't. That's why this matters. Because the final phase of a divorce isn't signing the papers. It's closing every open door. And if no one else is going to warn you about that, then let this be the moment you hear it loud and clear. The agreement is only the beginning. What you do next determines everything. Looking back, most women don't regret getting divorced. They regret assuming the hardest part was over once the papers were signed. No one tells you that the real damage happens after the judgment, when you think everything's settled. But it's not. If you've watched this far, you already know the truth. A divorce agreement without follow-through is just a document. It doesn't protect your retirement. It doesn't guarantee child support. It doesn't stop your credit from being destroyed or your name from being tied to things you've already left behind. But here's the good news. Most of these problems are preventable. You can protect yourself. You can close every door, file every order, and walk away completely, without leaving loose ends that drag behind you for years. So ask yourself, have you finished the paperwork? Or have you truly finished the process? Because your future, your peace of mind, your finances, your freedom, doesn't depend on what your ex agrees to. It depends on what you finish after the agreement. If this video gave you clarity, or even just made you pause and think, let us know by leaving a comment below. Share one thing you learned today, or something you wish someone had told you earlier in the process. And if you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep making honest, helpful content like this, to inform, to empower, and to make sure that no woman ever walks into her next chapter unprepared. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.